In this section, we'll now configure our TypeORM. We'll connect to a database and also create some of the commands within our package.json so that we can easily run the commands to create new migration, run the migration, revert the migration. So first, make sure that you have MySQL 8 installed on your machine, and also make sure that you have a database called bookie_ts. So for now, my database's name will be bookie_ts_u2. So without any delay, let's get started. So first thing that we need to do is within the src directory, we'll create a new directory called database, and then we need to create a new file that includes few of the information for the data source. So the TypeORM has few of the breaking changes from the previous versions. So when I was going through the official documentations and all of the processes, the previous ways or the previous steps has been deprecated. So it is something different at the moment. So for this, we'll create a new file called data source .ts. So for the naming convention, we are keeping it as simple as it is at the moment. So I agree that it's not the best practice, so we need to have some sort of consistent naming pattern throughout our application, but for now let's keep everything simple. So first thing that we need to do is that we will import .env. So we'll basically import it, and what we need to do is run this .env.config so that we can load the contents from the .env file. So we need to create a new constant over here, export const. We'll name this as app data source, and this will be a new data source. So we can simply import it from the TypeORM. So since we are not building any sort of framework and this application is intended to work with MySQL, so the type will basically be MySQL, and then we need to provide the host as well. So the host can be process.env.db_host, or if not provided, let's make sure that it's 127.0.0.1, which is the local host. So at the end of this section or this video, we will be also making use of Docker. So in that case, we can have this done easily. So for that, we are not providing the we are not strictly typing the things over here. Instead, we want to make the things dynamic. So for the port, let's make this to process.env.db_port, and if it is not provided, it will be 3306, which is the default port for the MySQL. So we need few other things like username, which will also be coming from process.env.db_username. If not provided, let's assume that it will be user, and also for the password, it will be similar as process.env.db_password, and if nothing is provided, let's assume that it's root. So it's security vulnerable. It is a security vulnerability to have root as the password, but yeah, you can keep the things as per your need. So for the database, let's get it from the env as well, db_database, and then I will set this to Boki as default value if not provided, and we need few of the other things as well. So we want to do the logging, so let's set this to true at the moment, and then synchronize. So there is an option so within TypeORM that you have a model file or entity file. If you have this synchronize on, what this will do is it will automatically update the database schema for us. So actually, I do not feel that it is a very good practice to do that. So in production, it's a risky way. So we want to manually run the migrations like we do on the Laravel, like PHP artisan migrate, PHP migration rollback. So we'll be creating a similar command over here as well. So synchronize, I will set this to false. I strictly am against this, and we also need few of the other things like entities. So we need to import our model files over here, and finally subscribers. So let's keep this as empty file as well. So now what we did is we created a app data source and we are exporting it. So from the index.ts we need to import it, but before doing that, let's quickly go on to the env file. Let's copy the things that we require from here. Let's go to the .env file and let's simply make sure that we have all of these things set up. So for that, what I can do is doing the command D, it will select the next content with the same value. Then I can press shift function and press the left arrow so that I can go over here. And the next thing is, yeah, I need to press escape, and instead of this R, I will once again do the command D, and instead of this I will keep this to equals. So now I will save this. Yeah, I'll quickly fix this thing, and then okay, without any delay, let's get started. Let's fix this thing up. Okay, let's keep this as this, and then let's proceed. So my username is root, my password is also root, and my database is bookie_ts_youtube. Just to make sure, I will double check it, bookie_ts_youtube. Yeah, so I need to remove this comma. Okay, since this is an .env file. So yeah, we are pretty much done with this. So now let's go to the index.ts file, and over there we will be connecting to the TypeORM. So what can we do is we need to import the app data source. As you can see, we have imported it, and then we need to call the method called initialize, which is provided by the TypeORM itself. And then we need to, since this returns an promise, what we need to do is simply make sure that we are able to successfully connect to the database. In that case, we can simply log a message saying that database connection success, and then if there is some error, let's say if there is any sort of error, in that case what will we do is do something like console.error, and then we'll simply pass the error. So after this is done, we can listen on the particular port. So now so as you can see, it automatically reflected all of these changes on my part. So what will I do is, because I had created a .env file, I want to make sure that I will provide some invalid value over here. So instead of root, I will provide root1, and I will try to run this command again using enddev. So as you can see, we got an error because of this particular line over here. We can see the particular error, and if everything is fine, let's say everything was fine, what could we do is we could have a successful database connection. So let's keep these things aside, and now let's move on to the another section of this database section, which is to create some commands so that we can automatically generate a migration. Like we can create a migration in Laravel using PHP artisan migration make and provide the name of the migration. So for that, let's go to the package.json. Over there, what we need to do is we need to add some of the commands. So for this, I will create a command called TypeORM, and then so please make sure that, please note that this is also something that has been changed with the latest version of the TypeORM. So it needs to be something like this, and then we need to specify the directory will be src. We need to provide the directory, we need to provide the data source, so it comes from src database, and we have stored this as data source.ts. and then so now what can we do is let's create a command like what we have in Laravel. So migration so this can be, so first we need to call this command TypeORM itself, yarn TypeORM, and then it will call migration. So basically, just by doing this, after this, what could we do is yarn TypeORM, and we could have done migration. So but the fact is that I do not want to repeat this code again and again, so that's why we are doing this. So migration show, and then we also need few of the we want to create a new migration. So for that, let's do something like migration and then create. So for this, I will create a new script. So I'll just I'll just be covering this in a second. So and then we'll run a migration run command, which will be yarn TypeORM, and this will be migration run. And finally we want to revert the migration, so which will be migration revert, which will be yarn TypeORM migration revert. So there is a strange thing over here. So you can understand that all of these things are coming from TypeORM, but here you can see we have some sort of script that we are running. So there is some problem with TypeORM that we cannot automatically create the migration. We can create it, but the fact is that we need to provide the full path of the data source, and it is very tedious. So instead, let's make sure that we can have this done very easily. So we are so for this purpose, we are creating another script which can help us to create the migration, so which will basically extend the functionality from TypeORM itself. So for this, within this project, let's create a new directory called scripts, and then from there we can basically run the migration. So we'll keep this everything outside of the src. So we'll create a folder. So I'll do this using command itself. So I am over here, so mkdir as scripts, and I will touch a new file over here. So this is named as migration-create.js. So for this, we require one package that is yargs. So it is yarn args. So what can we do is yarn add -d. So let's do this as yargs. So yeah, it will install this package for us. So over here, so this will be like user bin, okay, user /bin/env, and it will be node. So first we need to get the yargs. We can do this by requiring it. So yargs, and also we need to get this exec sync. This will be getting from the child underscore process, and then we need to pass few of the command line arguments. So I want to save the time. I will basically copy the contents and I will just paste it over here. So if you see, yeah, this is the basic command. So the path where we want to create the migrations will be src database migrations, and over there we can pass some name, and this will basically call TypeORM migration create migration path, and this is all. So the reason for me to do this is that there is some sort of problem when trying to do with this TypeORM, and we do not want to type everything. So I want to save the time, so we are doing this. So let's go over here. There is a directory called database. So from the database, we want to have few of the migrations over there. So we'll create a new folder called migrations. So now let's quickly see if we can create a new migration or not. So how can we do that? We need to run the command migration create, and we can simply we can provide the argument. So let's try. So what will you do is yarn, and then we say migration create, and what will you say is test. So let's hope that it does something. So as you see, there is a new migration that is created using this command. So let's go to this directory inside the migrations. Yeah, so there is a basic migration So within this migration, you can see we can pretty much have two commands like up and down, where we write the migration logic so that we can create a database or do something, create a table or do something, and in the down we can simply revert the changes. So yeah, this was the very basic change. We are successful. We are able to get this content as well. So let's basically delete it and let's move it to trash. And now let's go to the data source to make sure that everything is okay at the moment. So yeah, we pretty much created a command which helps us to create a new migration. So now we are creating an application called bookie. So the first thing in this bookie would be there is a books, and books belongs to some authors. So within the books table, so there will be one column called author id. So author id is a foreign key which belongs to the authors table. So for that we need authors table. So let's use the magic that we just created a command to create new migration. So let's quickly create a migration using this command, and let's add some migration logic inside there so that we can quickly create a authors table. So I will use the command. So I will name this as create. I want to zoom this thing and it basically zooms everything, but I'll zoom 2 times back. So create yarn migration create authors table. So we are trying to follow the convention that we do with Laravel. So now as you can see, we created a new authors table. So we have the 2 methods over here. So let's quickly create a new table. So as you can see, this is, since we are making use of TypeScript, you can see the return type would be a promise, but it does not return anything. So await and then query runner dot create table. So even for creating a table, so there are 2 different ways that we can run the migrations. So one would be the traditional syntax of the MySQL. We could use the traditional MySQL syntax, and the next would be to make use of TypeORM's API. So coming from Laravel's background, I really love the API part. So we'll try to see how we can do that over here. So we need to create a new table. So for this, what can we do is we provide a new table, and then over here we will name this as authors, and then we need to specify a few of the columns over there. So the first column would be id. As we know, most of the cases we have id as our first column, and then the type will be int. We'll keep the things very simple, and we'll specify that this is a primary, and then we also need to make sure that it is auto generated, and we also need to provide the generation strategy, which will be increment. So there would be some cases where we could prefer uid instead of integer. So that's a different topic. We'll cover that in upcoming videos, but for now let's keep the things very simple. So the first thing with the authors would be we'll have the id, name, and the email address. So the next field will be, it will be name, and then and the type will be varchar, and the length would be 255, and then we'll make sure that it is not nullable. So we'll keep this to false, and then finally the last column that we want would basically be the email. So let's keep this to email, and then we want to make sure that the email is unique. So what can we do is unique. We can simply keep this to true. So, and then at the end we need to also provide another configuration over here. So within the create table, the first argument would be the table, and if we see and if not exist. So we create the table only if it does not exist. So for that thing, what can we do is, after this we can pass the second argument. So we'll create the table only if it does not exist. And what do we want to do on the down is we will simply run the await query runner dot, we'll want to drop the table which is named as authors. So I want to make a few changes on this table. So I also want to have two columns called created at and updated at, which holds the information about the timestamp when the entity was created. So let's add a first column called created at. It will be of time, date time, and the default value will be now. And also we need another field which will basically be updated at. So also we want to make this field to be nullable as well. So even though we have the default value, we can set them to be nullable as well. Okay, let's keep it nullable. We can remove it if we think we do not need it to be nullable in the upcoming parts. So yeah, let's keep it to be nullable. Also, the last thing, I think let's add an image as well for the author. So there is an ID, name, email, and let's also add another field called, to save the time, what will I do is I will simply copy the contents from this part. So I will copy this and I will paste it over here. So the name, and there will be some small bio about it. So because on the upcoming part, after we complete the API, we will also be creating front-end applications. We might use Vue or React or maybe Angular, but let's make sure that we have sufficient things that can be used. So let's keep this to I think let's keep it to text, and then the length would be 255. So we do not want to hard encode the length, so it is nullable. That's all. And the last thing, I think we can have an image as well. So the author also can have an image. So let's keep this as image. It will be of Bharkar, and then it will be nullable as well, and the length would be like 255. And then let's simply save this. So behind the scenes, I figured out that there is a small mistake over here. It's not a mistake, but we missed something. So we do want to have the command to show whether or not the migration was run. In that case, we missed a configuration over here. So we can provide the migrations, and the migrations that this configuration needs to check is a source database and then migrations, and from there it can be anything with the extension of the TS or the TypeScript. So now so we have everything up and running. So now what can we do is we can see whether or not the migrations were run. So let's open the terminal. So yeah, behind the scenes I had made some changes. I had run this. So let's try this, yarn and then migration. So yeah, so there was one table which was already migrated, but this does not make any sense because we did not have added a few of the columns. Like it only has created at, but we are missing bio, and we are also missing the updated at and image as well. So in that case, what can I do is to demonstrate that the rebot also works. So yarn migration rebot, what this will do is it will basically revert back the changes. So if I once again go to my SQL client and then run to see, you see that there are no tables. So yeah, then there is no table, but there is one table called migrations. So let's get everything from the migrations. Select everything from migrations, and then if I run this, it seems that there is id, timestamp, and the name. So it is the same pattern that the Laravel follows. So it is generally the same pattern. They look for the file and they check in the database whether or not that the file with a specific name has been migrated. So now we are pretty much done with the migration. So let's run the migration. So how can we do that? We can do this by yarn migration and run. Let's simply run this, and then let's come back over here, and then let's try to reload it. So this is the first time that I am using this tool, so I pretty much do not have clear idea about this. So now I want to view the information about this table. So I think I need to I don't think it can be done like that. So open table in new tab. Okay, it does not do as I wanted, so I will close this. Yeah. So yeah, you pretty much got the idea how this is all about. So I can show this using MySQL minus u root minus p, and then root, and I need to use bookie underscore ts underscore youtube, and then I can simply describe the authors table. So there you can see we have id, name, email, bio, image, created and updated at. So all of the fields are like most of the fields are nullable. So that's all. So it cannot be null, but yeah, other fields they are non-nullable as well, but created and updated at can be null. So in that case, I think what should we make sure is that even the bio and the image, it needs to be nullable. So I will change this to true, and then is nullable. Bio, it can also be true because we do not want to have the full data every time. But the name, it needs email cannot be null. So yeah, everything is fine. So once again, let's go and let's exit from this, and then yarn migration, and then revert back the migration, and then let's once more run the yarn migration and run. So doing this, it will create the table as we wanted.